right, welcome everybody to another episode of Sasquatch Radio. Today is July 15th, 2024. And before we bring our guest on, let's on our co-host, Garry Kendrick. How you doing?
Great, Billy. How are you today?
Doing good. I'm just glad you don't have paint all over you.
Yeah, it's been painting at the campground has been rough this year. I'd like to give a shout out to a little guy down at the campground, Cooper Kaiser. Hope you're watching, pal.
All right, cool. Without further ado, we're going to our guest on here tonight, Eric Altman. How you doing, Eric?
Hey, long time no see.
Oh, Eric.
How have you been?
Busy, Billy. Busy. Good to see you, Gary. And I want to throw a quick shout out to everybody in the chat room. If I don't answer you, I apologize. I don't have the ability to chat because I'm not connected to YouTube. So just say hello to everybody.
Yep. Yeah, we got a few in there. They're commenting. So, all right. Yeah, I think we got a little bit of an internet delay. So everybody just bear with us tonight. And StreamYard's having some issues. So there's probably a little bit of a delay, so we apologize if anybody gets talked over. But Eric, as usual, I'm going to turn it over to Garry because he is I call him my personnel researcher.
Hey, Eric, it's good to see you again, pal. I've met Eric a couple of times. Really, really good guy. I can't talk enough about, the influence that you made on me the few times that we've met. But getting into a little history, Eric was the founder and president of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society from 2000 to 2016. Is that correct?
More like 2000. Well, 1999, I joined the group. 2000, I took over as the director, was the director till about 2014. And then I stepped down for a couple of years, and then Sean Forker and a couple others, Dave Dragazin, talked me into taking the group back over again. So in 2020, we relaunched the PBS.
Sweet. I kind of went back in history a little bit and wanted to go back to September of 2020 or 2003. In September of 2003, you were interviewed, and you stated that you're 95% believing that Sasquatch exists. Since that time, have you changed either to believing more or less?
Probably less. And that's because I have not had a sighting. I've had a couple of possible sightings over the years, but I've never had a definitive sighting where I can say, yes, I've actually seen it. So I know 100% that it's real, but I still am leaning towards it actually being an animal that does exist. I just have never seen one myself. I've had some, like I said, pretty close calls, heard some crazy stuff. I just cast 3 really interesting footprints. So I'm still pretty high on the percentage that it's real. I haven't seen one to 100% convince myself.
It says you have over 32 years of experience, and you're a podcaster, you're a host, co-host, an event organizer, and a member of several paranormal groups. In the 32 years or more that you've been researching Sasquatch, what are your biggest influences in that time?
Who are my biggest influences, or what?
Yes, who was your biggest influences?
My biggest influences.
Just who was your biggest influences?
Okay, who? Well, the first I'd have to say, without a shadow of a doubt, would be longtime UFO Bigfoot researcher Stan Gordon. I met Stan when I was about 13 years old. He had a UFO Bigfoot exhibit at the local mall, and he would do it every summer for a weekend. And I had an interest at that time but I was just reading the books and watching the shows. I wasn't really doing field research or investigating cases. I just had that interest. And I met him for the first time that summer of, I believe it was 1983. And he talked to me almost the entire weekend. I kept going back to the mall. My parents would drop me off, and I'd spend the whole day just poring over his UFO photographs and articles, pictures of Bigfoot tracks and casts. And I bugged the heck out of him. And what really kind of stuck with me is I'm a 13-year-old kid, and he didn't tell me to get lost. He actually took the time and talked to me and answered every question I had, even as annoying as I was and bugged him. He was very gracious and very patient and took the time to answer any questions I had. So that really played a key role in influences as far as personalities go. And as a matter of fact, Stan and I are still very close friends to this day. I was just in the Chestnut Ridge with him yesterday, as a matter of fact, and we talk on the phone probably once, twice a week and multiple times through email. So he's one of my biggest influences, but I've had several others over the years. I owe a lot to Don Keating of the Eastern Ohio Bigfoot Investigation Center. I met him in 1996, I believe it was, at one of his events. And he's pretty much the guy that encouraged me to start getting into the woods and looking for this thing myself and talking to people and investigating and doing all the field work. So I owe a lot to him as well. Some of the old time people that I've had a chance to get to know over the years, Robert Morgan was a huge influence on me. Being from the East Coast, the Ohio area, I followed a lot of his work. Of course, I had the opportunity to meet Bob Gimlin. Billy and I met Bob in Washington and Ohio and got to be good friends with Bob. He became a real influence. And there are some other people in the field that I consider influences as well, like Billy, Steve Calls. There are many of my peers and colleagues that I work with closely that have played a big role and influence on my 30 plus years of doing this.
Sweet. Eric, what would be your favorite sighting story or your favorite encounter? I'd like to hear some about the encounters that you had.
Well, I'll share with you my favorite and my least favorite sighting. It's the same one, and I think you guys will get a kick out of this. This happened in May of 2020. If I remember correctly, it was a Saturday night. I was going to bed, and my phone dinged, and I picked it up and looked at the message on Facebook, and it said, "You're not going to believe this." And seeing from who it was from, I put the phone down and went to sleep. And I figured I'll just talk to the person in the morning. So morning comes, and I'm just about to jump in the shower, and I sent a message to the person, and I said, "What's going on? Sorry, I was going to sleep when you messaged me last night." And the person responded and said, "I saw a Bigfoot." And knowing who the person was, I kind of smirked and chuckled and went, "Yeah, right." And responded and said, "Yeah, okay." And this person responded back, said, "No, I'm deadly serious. I saw a Bigfoot last night about midnight on my way back to the fire station." And I was kind of like, "Okay, well, tell me about what happened." And this person proceeded to tell me that this person's a paramedic, and they were in the ambulance with their partner, and they were driving down a mountain road in the Chestnut Ridge in South Pennsylvania, heading back to the fire station around midnight, maybe 11:55 p.m. And in the distance, they saw a dark-colored figure, shadowy figure, standing on the left-hand side of the berm of the road. And as the ambulance got within maybe about 125 feet of this figure, it took 3 long strides across the road and ran up an embankment and disappeared into the woods. And this person told me that it was all dark in color. It was taller than the ambulance, and the ambulance sits about 7.5 feet off the ground. It had no clothing on, no shoes on. It made a horrible smell, they noticed as they drove by. And as they continued down the road, all the electronics in the ambulance they were driving just shut off. And they continued to cruise down the road, and then and it came back on again. This person got to the fire station and called her husband and told her husband what she had just seen. And husband went back out and looked. They didn't see anything. But that morning, they agreed to meet me at the sighting location. And it's only about maybe 40 minutes from my house. So I said, yeah, I'll meet you there. I'll jump in my truck right now. I grabbed my son. We headed down there and proceeded to look at the area where this person had her sighting. And I measured the road. The road was 24 feet wide. And apparently, as she claimed, it took 3 large strides across the road and went up an embankment. So that would be an 8-foot stride between each footfall. We did find some large single impressions that went up the embankment into this wooded area. We searched the wooded area. We didn't find any prints or any other tracks, just those 3 impressions in the tall grass. As I was taking notes and interviewing the witness, we heard 2 very loud, high-pitched screams that came off a wooded hillside on the left side of the road where we were parked. And we all just kind of stopped and looked. And we were like, wow, that's crazy. But she had a sighting, and I completely believed her. And what makes this my favorite sighting and my least favorite sighting was in 2020, I had been doing research for about 25, 26 years, give or take. And I have, like I said, I've never seen a Bigfoot. But of all the people to have a Bigfoot sighting, my sister had a Bigfoot sighting before me. So I hate my sister. I'll just put that out there. It's my least favorite Bigfoot sighting report because my sister saw Bigfoot and I didn't. And it's also my favorite because my sister was lucky enough to validate my research after 30 years. So there you go.
That's pretty good. That is pretty good. Another quick question here. I had Mick post one if I can get to it. Question for Eric. Are you going to be involved in any Sasquatch-related TV specials or shows in the near future?
Yes. And I can't say which show it is, but it'll be out in the next month or so. It's a very popular show. And I signed an NDA that I can't talk about what show it is. But yes, I will be out on a TV show, an episode of this program, probably in August, September, but it's a very well-known show, and myself and a couple other researchers from Pennsylvania made the show. So,
sweet.
Okay, good.
Which kind of leads me into my next question. If you can talk about it, have you worked on any TV shows or movies?
Yes. I've filmed several documentaries, which have appeared recently on YouTube. The Small Town Monsters just released a 6-episode series called Sasquatch Unearthed the Ridge, which I appear in. And I am filming with a Polish television company that's coming all the way over from Poland to film me this week for an episode for a show over there in Poland. And I'm doing some other documentary films coming up in the near future. And as I mentioned, the TV show will be aired soon. So, yeah, I've been kind of busy filming and recording some upcoming episodes.
Sweet.
Good deal.
Sweet. This is a weird one. I ask this question to every guest. Animal, mineral, or vegetable? Animal, do you believe that Sasquatch is just an animal? Mineral, do you believe that Sasquatch may be some type of interdimensional or alien entity? Or vegetable, do you think it might possibly be paranormal? Or could it be a combination of all 3?
I will answer that by saying I do not know what Sasquatch is. When I first started this, I was a firm believer that this was an undiscovered primate that was existing in North America with a very low population, thus the reason for us not being able to find one. But as the years progress, due to personal experiences, as well as interviewing very credible eyewitnesses that have had experiences and sightings that are not normal of your typical flesh and blood animal, I don't know what we're dealing with. And I think
And
that's
I say
the
that quite a
safest
bit.
answer. What's that, Gary? I didn't catch that.
I say that quite a bit too, that, none of us have one tied up down in the barn that we go down and study every day. So there's really no way of knowing.
I'm sorry, I got part of that because the internet connection was kind of behind. So I got something tied up in a barn.
I said none of us have one tied up in the barn. So we can't go down there and check on it every day.
Good point. Good
But
point.
That's an excellent answer. That's a truthful answer. This one's going to be a little strange for some people that don't know you. But how did you come up with the name Bigfoot Boy?
Well, at the time, there really wasn't anybody with that moniker in the Yahoo chat that really had a name like that. And I was pretty young when I got interested in Bigfoot. So I just, thought, okay, well, I was a boy when I found an interest in this, about 10 years old. So why not just stick with that? And Billy remembers the Yahoo chat groups. I'm sure you do too, Gary. We used to get together on Friday nights and Saturday nights and chat, and that just stuck. And I just use that for my email address, really. I've always gone by Eric Altman. So,
yeah, the Bigfoot Boy. I like that one. In your years active, which you've been actively investigating for a while, what is your most compelling piece of evidence?
That would be the 3 footprints that I just cast on April the 28th of this year. We were contacted, the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society was contacted by 4 gentlemen that were out scouting an area north of Bedford, Pennsylvania, looking for an area to go turkey hunting. It was a couple weeks before youth turkey season began. I actually think it was a couple days before youth turkey season began. And they were out in an area scouting for turkey. And as they were walking along the TV trail, they came across 4 impressions in the ground. One was in the actual solid earth, a little bit impressed in. The other 3 were in a mud pit, and they had sunk down about 2-3 inches. So I gave the report to one of our members, and her name is Joyce, and asked her to follow up. And she called the guy and talked to the guy. The guy was super excited. He'd never seen anything like it. He sent pictures to her, and she in turn sent pictures to me. And I was pretty impressed. I was like, wow, these are probably the best prints that I've ever seen in the ground. And they were fresh. They were just made within the last day or so of them finding them, even probably earlier than that. So I asked him if we could come up and take a look at them, and I could make a determination if they were bear print or actual possibly Bigfoot tracks. And he said, absolutely. So myself and my wingman, my research partner, Tom Mihawk, and Joyce, we met up with the 4 guys, and they took us to the location. One of the gentlemen did it and showed us where these tracks were. Now, between Friday when they found them and Sunday with us getting there on the 28th, one of the tracks was washed out. It had rained overnight, and Friday into Saturday. And I thought, oh great, there's going to be nothing left. But when we parked the trucks and walked about 200 yards back into the woods on the ATV trail, fresh in the mud were these 3 prints, and I goosebumps on my arms because they were distinct. They had really good toes. Probably the most impressive tracks that I've seen in Pennsylvania to date. And I've seen a lot of tracks over the years, mainly just impressions, some with possible toes. They're always kind of questioned, or what if, those kind of things. These were definitive. And I just had to take a step back, and I was on the phone to Cliff Berrickman, and I said, hey, dude, I got some real good tracks. There's water in these tracks. There's still mud, water. I need to make castings of these, but I've never made castings with that much water in the print. And he walked me through what to do, making the mixture a little thicker and drier. And we used dental stone and pulled out 3 really good prints. To this day, I'm pretty impressed with them myself. So the Ohio Bigfoot Conference was up to Ohio. Dr. Meldrum was there. I laid him out on the table, had him examine them. He looked over them. He was impressed with them. He's convinced that 75 to 80% they are the real thing. And then I took him down to Cliff, had Cliff look at them in person. He went over them. He was pretty impressed. He said there was even possibly some dermaglyphs in them, which I didn't notice at first. But yeah, that's probably the best piece of evidence and probably the best tracks to come out of Pennsylvania in a long, long time. And if you follow me on Facebook or on the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society page on Facebook, I posted those tracks and those prints, and they're still available up there if you want to go back and take a look at them. They're pretty impressive.
Excellent. I'm kind of running out of stuff here.
Gary,
I know.
no way.
Ask away.
One of the things that I'm curious about is Pennsylvania. You know, it's a pretty good haul from where I live at here in Virginia, and I can't be for certain, but I'm fairly sure of what Sasquatch eats. What do you think his main food sources would be in Pennsylvania?
I believe that Bigfoot, if Bigfoot truly does exist, it has the same diet as a bear, an omnivore, or I like to call them an opportunist. And what I mean by that is they will eat whatever they can get their hands on. Because there's been reports of them being seen at garbage dumps, in dumpsters, rummaging through people's trash, killing domesticated animals, dogs and cats, as well as deer, raccoon, porcupine, small game animals, wildlife as far as like domesticated animals, dogs, cats, chickens. People have had their chicken pens broken into and chickens taken. And I also think they eat deer, and they also eat vegetation, berries, fruits, whatever they can get their hands on, really, corn. We just had a sighting in March of a Bigfoot in Indiana County seen standing just inside the first row of corn alongside a road. So I suspect it was trying to pull some corn up and eat whatever had grown at that point. So I think they eat whatever they can eat. Yeah, and there's the castings that I made.
Wow. Excellent job.
They look much better in person, by the way.
Excellent job. I wanted to give you an opportunity. I know you're an event coordinator and you have an event coming up. This is your opportunity to give a shameless plug for your camping adventure that's coming up.
Yeah, this is our fourth Pennsylvania Bigfoot Camping Adventure that we've done. It's a charity fundraiser event, and all the net proceeds are being donated to 2 local charities in the area. What it consists of, and let me go back a little bit to give people a little bit of background about the event. For years, I did something called the East Coast Bigfoot Conference in Pennsylvania. And actually, Billy was a speaker at one of my events many years ago. And it was an indoor conference, much like the Ohio Bigfoot Conference and many of the conferences around the country. I stopped doing it in around 2011 for a couple reasons. It just got to be too cumbersome with my personal life, expensive, and the building we did it in, Pitzer's Townhouse Restaurant, closed down. So I just stopped doing it. And about 2016, I decided to try something new. At that time, there weren't a lot of outdoor events. And I had just attended. It was run by several Ohio researchers, Sharon Lee, Jesse, and his name escapes me at the moment. I apologize to him, but the 3 of them were running this like Bigfoot Adventure Camping Weekend thing. And it was pretty well attended. And what it did was it gave people the chance to camp out, hear from some researchers, go out in the woods and do a little researching at Salt Fork. And Alamagar, that's his name. But the three of them put on a really good event. And I was like, yeah, I could do something like this, but maybe add the conference element of it with some workshops, and give people the chance to go into the woods at night looking for Bigfoot camping. And any money that we raise selling tickets, we could donate to some charities. So that's how I came up with the concept of it, thanks to those guys in Ohio, stealing their idea, which I did give them credit for. So, yeah, we started it in 2016. I think our first event, we had about 300 people. We did one in 2017. That was a little more well attended, about 400 or 500 people. I took a year off to kind of regroup, try to replan and reorganize, figure things out that worked. It didn't work. 2019, we had close to probably 1,000 people show up for it. And we had sold maybe 700-800 tickets, plus all the vendors, the food trucks, the volunteers. We probably had close to maybe 1,000 people over the weekend. So it was a really successful event. We rose place to $10,000 for the charities. And at that point, I thought that's a great way to go out. It was a very successful event. People enjoyed it, but these events are becoming a drop of a hat. They're showing up everywhere. People are doing them everywhere. So maybe it's time for me to just take, the success I had and just retire. Well, unfortunately, that didn't last very long. I got bugged by people wanting it to come back, which is flattering. Don't get me wrong. I was very honored that people enjoyed it that much. But then Benner's reached out to me where we held it. They asked me to put it on again. So after consulting with my wife and family and talking with some of the organizers from the past event, we decided let's try it again. So here we are in 2024 holding the 2024 Pennsylvania Bigfoot Camping Adventure. We've got 8 speakers lined up. We have 2 workshops prepared. Presenters going to do workshops there at the event. We've got 4 TV guest celebrities coming in. We've got night hikes planned. We've got Sasquatch karaoke for those who like to sing and karaoke. We've got food trucks. We've got over 50 vendor booths going to be set up for the event. So it's turned into a pretty nice little festival that we're going to have. And people, unfortunately, there are no more spaces left at Benner's. The campground's sold out, which is great for Benner's, but people don't have to camp. They can still attend the event if they'd like to do so. Come out and hear guys like Steve Calls, Jay Pachochin, Stan Gordon, Brian Parsons, Dave Spinks, Ron Murphy. We even have a skeptic coming in, Keddy Biddle. He's going to come in and talk about why he's convinced Sasquatch doesn't exist. We've got workshops, like I said. We have a charity auction. So there's a lot of stuff going on that weekend. It's September 6th and 7th. And it's taking place again at Benner's Meadow Run Campground in Farmington, Pennsylvania, which is right in the heart of the Chestnut Ridge, the Bigfoot hotspot here in southwestern Pennsylvania. So people can camp. They can go out in the woods at night with us, and we show them how to research. They can look for Bigfoot on their own and get that experience. They can hear from some great speakers, meet some TV guest celebrities. We've got Ken Gerhard from The Proof is out there. We've got 2 of the guys from the Ames team, the Mountain Monster TV show. Jeff and Willie are going to be back again. And from Expedition Bigfoot, Ronnie LeBlanc will be joining us. So it's going to be a family-friendly event. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's for a good cause. We're raising money for Fayette Friends of Animals, which is an animal shelter here in Fayette County in western Pennsylvania, and One Voice, One Community that helps underprivileged children.
Excellent. We had a question in the chat real quick. It's from Tennessee Cherokee. Hey, Eric, do you use dental stone to cast footprints?
Normally I use bonding cement because it's a lot cheaper and easier to get a hold of. in this case, where I make the cast, we showed the picture on the screen. My research partner, Tom Mihawk, his wife manages several dental offices, so she has access to dental stone and has donated dental stone to us to use for future castings. So the casts that you see there were actually made from dental stone this time.
Nice. Well, it's that time, guys. I know Eric's like, no, you can just skip it. But he knows I'm not going to skip it.
Oh, yeah. Don't play any songs. I don't want to hear any songs about me. I'm good, thanks.
There we go. We're going to do it. It is going to happen. So I know Gary's got his banjo out and ready. So here we go.
I'm just going to hang my head in shame.
Here we go.
Eric Altman, he's a man on the quest. He'll love the chestnut ridge, he won't rest. With the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society by his side, he searches for that legend where the shadows hide. He's got his flashlight and his thermal cake. In the silent woods, he's the biggest fan, listening for whispers in the rustling trees, hoping for a sighting that brings him to his knees. Out in the wild under the moon's light, Eric's chasing dreams in the heart of the night, with every footprint in every night. The mystery of Bigfoot's always on his mind. They gather around the campfire, sharing old tales of giant creatures with stories that never tell. From dusk till dawn, they roam the land, searching for proof they can finally understand. Through the pine and oak, where few dare to tread, Eric's determination is the path he's led. In the chestnut ridge, where the legends grow, he follows tracks in the muddy ground below. Sometimes he wonders if it's all just a myth, for his whispers keep the faith to persist. With the Pennsylvania crew, he feels right at home. Together they're grounded in this search, never alone.
There you have it.
That's all right.
I tell you.
It's all right.
It sounded like John Denver.
From Denver.
Yeah, the one that sung a song about West Virginia, but the stuff he's singing about is actually in Virginia.
Right.
Right here, Mick got a pretty good comment right there. Mick says this is what Gary sounds like after getting into the hooch.
Oh man.
Sasquatch shine.
Wolf.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
He says, "Hey Eric."
Go ahead, Billy.
I was just saying, JC said in the chat, "Hey Eric, love you, bro."
JC.
Hey, buddy. Love you too, man.
See
Good
that
old
cat?
JC.
So, Eric, let me ask you real quick here. With all your event planning and filming and things like that, how often do you actually get to go out into the field now and do research?
I was out this past weekend. It didn't last very long, unfortunately, but I try to get out as much as I can. But I'm working with Derry, Pennsylvania Council Borough to help them implement Bigfoot into their town. And I've been busy working with them. I dressed as Bigfoot in their Latrobe Independence Day parade. That was fun. But yeah, I get out as much as I can. Not as much as I want to be out there. I'd like to be out there every weekend if possible, every day if possible. But trying to balance my job, my family, and doing all the other things, the event planning, helping other people to plan events, meetings with people, filming. It keeps me really busy. So I get out. I still get out pretty frequently, but not as much as I'd really like to be.
I know me and you are pretty close in age. Growing up in the 70s and 80s, I was really influenced by a lot of TV shows, Boggy Creek and things like that. What were some of the influences that, as a child that you come up with? I know you have a huge collection of books, but what were some of the influences that, you got from TV or what you read?
I think the first would have to be Boggy Creek. I saw that when I was about 10 years old. That in the movie Creature from Black Lake. That's really what kind of inspired me to start looking into the phenomenon and reading about it and studying newspaper articles. Those two movies. And then, of course, watching Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of. That was huge. And then into Sasquatch, The Legend of Bigfoot. Gosh, there's so many Bigfoot movies in the 70s that were great. The $6 Million Man episodes with Bigfoot and Wild Boy that was done by Sid and Marty Krofft. Just so many different TV shows I would watch as a kid growing up. And then it kind of moved into the 80s, which I watched Tim White's Sightings, if you remember that. It was on the Sci-Fi Channel. There were always Bigfoot episodes on that. And I still continue to watch as much as I could whenever there a documentary or a TV special would come on about Bigfoot, I'd watch it. Getting into the 90s and 2000s, there weren't a lot of really good Bigfoot movies, some pretty crappy ones. But I would say that in the last couple of years, some good movies have come out. Like Exists, that was a good one. There's Something in the Woods, which was a fictional film based on supposed actual events that happened in the eastern Texas, the big thicket in Texas. There's been some pretty decent movies that have come out in the last couple of years that have been okay. I will forewarn everybody, do not see Sasquatch Sunset. Sunset Sasquatch, whatever the hell it's called. It's horrible.
I have to be honest. Really I think I've watched every bad Bigfoot movie that's ever been made. It's kind of my guilty pleasure. Digger Dog.
I think I have too. Yeah.
Digger Dog says, Eric, what has been your strangest encounter or cryptid in Pennsylvania?
I've had a few strange encounters. Keep in mind, I never saw the animal that was responsible for it, but I've recorded some sounds that are just chilling. I've had a couple really weird experiences where I'll share one with you real quick. This happened in February of 2022 in an area that I've been heavily researching now for the last 2 years. There was 5 of us in the 2 vehicles. The first vehicle was my sister and her husband. And in the second vehicle in my truck was myself, my partner, Tom Mihawk, and my son. And we were driving some back mountain roads because there had been recent activity, a sighting around the area, and some strange sounds coming out of those woods. And as we were driving on this really rural, mountain, rocky, rutted road, we weren't driving very fast because the road's really poor condition. But as we were driving, something large and down to the ground, ran in front of the Jeep in front of us that my sister and brother-in-law were in. And we came to a stop because she had seen just this big black form run across the Jeep. So she thought it might have been a bear, and she got out, and my brother-in-law came back to our truck, told us what she had seen. So we all stopped, and I had my thermal FLIR. So I began FLIRing the woods to our right where this animal ran into. And about 100 yards down into the woods, we saw something, a very large heat signature on the ground. From my angle, it looked like a big rock just giving off heat. But as they were looking at it and they took my FLIR off of me, they said it possibly was a deer. So we kind of equated whatever ran in front of us as a deer. And I said to my research partner, Tom, I said, Tom, get in the back of my truck. I have a wood knocker back there. Grab it, and we'll try some wood knocks to see if we can get anything. He climbed in the back of the truck, and he was looking for it. And we were all standing in front of my truck, between my truck and the Jeep. And we were all paying attention to the woods down on the right. And just as we were standing there, we heard a very loud, crisp, clear wood knock that had to be no more than 10 feet behind my truck. And we all turned thinking it was Tom doing the wood knock, but it wasn't Tom because he was still inside the truck. So I spun around and started FLIRing the back of the truck and walking to the back of the truck. And we could, all of us physically heard an animal walking through the dry leaves and the branches that were down. And as I said, this is February, so there's no foliage on the trees. Everything's cold. It's a very crisp, cold night. My son heard it, my sister, my brother-in-law. Tom had gotten out of the truck by that point. We all heard the footfalls walking through the trees. And I'm FLIRing, and we're seeing absolutely nothing. And I'm following this sound with my FLIR and hearing these footfalls crunch, 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 and looking, but there's nothing showing up on the FLIR. We had flashlights out. We were looking for anything, eye shine, movement. Nothing was moving. We saw nothing causing trees to move, brush to move, but we still heard these footfalls, and they eventually just walked off into the woods and disappeared. And we kind of stood there for a few minutes looking at each other like, what the hell was that? What did we just hear? And we talked about it for a few minutes, and we couldn't come up with an answer. Some animal was walking through the trees, through that brush, and it wasn't thick that you couldn't see. You could see it was pretty open. There was no leaves or foliage on the bushes or trees. You could see with a thermal FLIR, I could see maybe a good 50 yards into the woods, and we could see absolutely nothing. And to this day, I still have no idea where the wood knock came from. And like I said, it was literally 10 feet behind the pickup truck. And we all spun around thinking it was Tom, expecting to see Tom standing next to a tree doing the knocks on the trees. But it wasn't. He's buried in the back of my truck looking for my stick. And then we heard the footfalls. And to this day, I have no explanation as to what it was. None. And an interesting little side note to that is we got in the trucks after talking about it for a while. We decided to head out up the mountain road up to the top of the mountain and just call it a night, because it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And we were like, yeah, it's too cold. Nothing else is happening. Let's hit the road. So we start driving out. We get maybe 200 yards down the road, and the Jeep in front of us comes to another screeching halt again. I stopped. My brother-in-law came back and said, you're not going to believe this, but something was just thrown at my Jeep. And it made a huge thud on the driver's side door, just behind my driver's side door. And we looked, we couldn't find any rocks. The only thing we found was a log laying on the road. We were assuming it was a wet log that was thrown at his Jeep. And again, we FLIRed, we flashlighted it, we looked everywhere. We couldn't find any sign of any kind of animal out there. So that was probably the strangest possible cryptid encounter we had. I have no idea what it was. I'm not going to try to speculate and guess what it was, but something was in the woods that night. Something knocked on a tree or made that wood knocking sound, and something was tromping around in them woods that we just couldn't see.
Next. Thanks. Billy, that's all I've got for Eric. If you got anything you want to step in with.
Yeah, I think Eric, even you and I have had our share of strange phenomenon. If you remember when we was in Ohio that one night and we were sitting real nice and quiet in Ohio and heard something, never could figure out what it was. And then, of course, someone had to come along and ruin it. And so we've had our fair share of what in the world was that.
Yeah, I had a really crazy experience in 2011. If you want me to, I'll share that story with you because
Sure.
it's probably the most active night I've ever had doing research. We had received a report from a gentleman who was a deputy constable at the time in Fayette County up on the top of the Chestnut Ridge. And he was working at night as a supervisor for a security team that was overwatching a windmill construction farm. And they had a setup where they had several big sheds and trailers, office trailers, porta-johns, all kinds of equipment. They had copper wiring on the property. So, and they were at the time they were constructing windmills at this farm and then setting them up at different places on the ridge, not far from this construction site. And he was hired, and his crew was hired to sit at the construction site overnight and just kind of monitor things, make sure nobody was stealing any tools or breaking in any of the offices or stealing any copper. So he would have one or two people up there at night and kind of just monitoring the area. And then he hired another person to drive around at night and to check out some of these gas wells to make sure they were being vandalized or any damage being done to them. So there was usually 2 or 3 people that worked the night shift. And this was in September of 2011. He contacted me and told me that for several weeks prior, his research team was hearing screams and howls and knocks, and many of the researchers had personal experiences at this construction site, and they were becoming a little unnerved. They would hear things and not be able to see where it was coming from. They hear wood knocks, but they never saw anything. So we made arrangements with him as the PBS back then to bring a research group up and sit on the construction site. And this construction site was a pretty big area. I mean, it was big enough that you could put 20, 25 people on the perimeter of it and they'd still be spread out. So we made arrangements with him to go up in the middle of September. I think it was like September 10th or 11th or something like that. And about 2 days before we were supposed to go up, he called me and said, "We figured out what's making all the screams and the howls and the knocks." And I said, "Okay, well, what do you think it is?" He goes, "No, it's not what I think it is. It's what I know it is, what I saw." And that night, 2 nights before we arrived, he was sitting in the very front of the construction site in his car, and he was looking at his phone and just playing around and just being, trying to stay awake. And he saw something move about 75 feet away from him. There's a pole light, and there was a big wooden board that had all the electrical boxes and electrical circuit breakers and stuff for the different offices. And, it was the only really pole light in the very front of the property. But he saw something moving around this pole light, and he first thought it was a bear because it was very low to the ground. It was kind of moving around real slowly, and he just kind of watched it for a few minutes and just realized it's just a bear, nothing more than that. And then it came out into the light and it stood up. And he just said when it stood up, it just kept standing up and up and up and up. And he was just kind of floored sitting there 75 feet away from this thing as it finally got upright and was looking at him. And he said he could see it kind of looking around the big board. It was almost like it was poking its head around and looking at him in the car, watching him. Then it would kind of dip back into the darkness and then stick its head out around again and look at him again. And he was just kind of stunned because he had never heard of Bigfoot before this. He wasn't a believer. But there it is, 75 feet away watching him. And he finally got a nerve. He had a sidearm on him. He got up the nerve, and this thing started walking off into the darkness. He chased after it, and then he realized, what am I going to do? If I shoot at this thing and I don't hit it or I don't kill it, it's going to turn around and it could easily kill me. and it's not bothering me. It's walking away. So he went back to his car, and that was his night. So he told me about his sighting that he had 2 days to us getting there prior. So I was excited. I was like, all right, we got a possibly active area. We've got many eyewitnesses who are hearing things and reporting encounters. And we finally arrived on site Friday evening, and there was a small group of us the first night, I think 5 or 6 of us. And we talked to him at length. The team had. One was in one of the porta-johns one night using it. They saw a huge shadow walk between the light pole and the porta-john, and they just towered over the top of the porta-john while he was in it. He saw things. Other members saw things walking between the office trailers. One guy thought he was going to be cute. He didn't believe all the stories about the howls and the screams. So he, sitting in his truck, he rolls his window down, sticks his head out the window, and screams as loud as he can. And within 5-10 minutes after he screamed, something walked up to the back of his pickup truck and roared at him. And he had enough, and that guy ended up quitting. So we heard about all these stories. We heard about his sighting. We surveyed the property. The first night, Friday night, nothing happened. We heard maybe a couple distant howls, which we thought maybe were coyotes, but really nothing really out of the ordinary. Saturday came. We went up just before dark. There was about 25 of us, and we'd set up some equipment, some recording equipment, and we had some night vision. I had a real small handheld thermal FLIR, and we set up a perimeter. We looked around the area. We got our bearings, went, grabbed a bite to eat, came back up after dark. And that's when all hell broke loose. It started on the far left front corner of the construction site. Someone started hearing some distant howls, and they brought it to our attention we were communicating through two-way radio. And we weren't hearing them in the back part of the construction site, but up front they were hearing. So they were communicating to us what they were hearing. And another group started hearing knocks coming from the woods, and something was walking around the perimeter of the construction site. You could hear it moving just inside the tree line, breaking branches, heavy footfalls, loud snaps. So we were all excited. We were kind of just looking at each other, kind of dumbfounded, like, this is crazy. There's sounds coming from almost every corner of this construction site. And it got to the point where I had left I was using an axe handle at the time for a wood knocker. And I was standing on the edge of a tree line on the left side of the construction site. And I could hear very, very loud, heavy breathing. And the best I could equate it to would be like Darth Vader with asthma. And it was just literally 10 feet inside the tree line. And I'm standing just at the tree line. And I'm wanting so bad to go into the tree line. My nephew, my sister, and brother-in-law were standing behind me, and they have a thermal FLIR. They can't see anything. My nephew's like, there's nothing there. And I'm like, I can hear it. There's something inside the tree line. And then whatever it was began to walk to my right and stayed inside the tree line. I could still hear it breathing. I could still hear the branches breaking. I could not see anything, but I could hear it. So I decided to walk along the outside of the tree line and follow it. And as soon as I got down to the far back left corner of the construction site, there were 5 loud wood knocks that happened on the opposite side of the construction site to my right at the back end. And I just literally almost crapped my pants because I wasn't expecting it. And everybody spun around. And when everybody spun around, whatever was there inside the tree line just took off like a bat out of hell. It sounded like a freight train going through the trees. And the group of us just stood there in kind of awe, looking at each other like, holy crap. And then we walked over to where we heard the wood knocks, and we tried to do some wood knocks over there. My nephew saw reddish, almost like an amber-colored eye shine that wasn't low to the ground. It was pretty high up. I didn't get a good look at it, but I thought maybe I saw an eye reflecting. But we had no flashlights or nothing to cause eye shine to, reflect. So it was almost like it was self-illuminating. The group up at the front end of the construction site, they were hearing knocks, screams, and howls. And I think we were actually able to capture 5 or 6 different types of howls. And one of them actually was, we call the Bobo howl. If you remember from Finding Bigfoot, Bobo did that real deep call, and it lasted about 5 or 10 seconds. Well, I did that. I tried doing that, and no matter, I did it 3 or 4 times. After the 4th time I did, and I stopped, down in the ravine right across from us, we got the same exact sound answered back to us. And Dave Rupert was with us, and you can hear Rupert on the radio. He goes, "What the fudge was that?" And we just kind of looked at each other, and we were like, this is insane. And it went on for almost like an hour and a half. It just, each side of the 4 corners of the construction site, there will be knocks, and we'd focus our attention over there. And then something would happen behind us, and we'd focus our attention in that direction. Something would happen there. And it went on, like I said, for an hour and a half. And there must have been 20 to 25 witnesses that heard the different sounds, the different calls, the knocks, seeing eye shine. It was just insane. And I think we left about 3 o'clock in the morning after everything finally died down that night. And we gathered the next day and discussed it. We listened to the recordings. We were just so blown away by the experience. And after that point, if I remember correctly, most of the security team had quit by that point. But I think the guy that had his initial sighting, his name was Doug, he continued to work there for a while. And I don't remember if he had any additional activity or experiences, but I know there was still stuff going on up there to the point where they eventually put a gate up around the construction site. And now nobody's allowed in it at all. They have big no trespassing signs up there and cameras everywhere. So I believe the activity up there has slowed down. And in 2016, less than a quarter mile away from that, there was a sighting, a roadside crossing sighting of 2 creatures that ran in front of a vehicle that, like I said, was about a quarter mile from the construction site. So I know they're still in the area. We go up to that area periodically, every so often, and kind of hang out at night to see if we can stir something up. Sometimes we have activity, sometimes we don't.
That's those are the nights I love. I think over a period of time, we always noticed that what we call prime time, for whatever reason, used to be like between 9 and 1.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ask me why, but especially around here, between 9 o'clock at night and 1 in the morning seems to be when you get some type of activity. And then after that, you might as well go on home because it's like nothing else happens.
Eric, I got one more quick question for you, if you don't care.
No, go ahead.
Where you're talking about the construction site with the no trespassing signs, has there ever been an occasion where you thought you might be arrested for doing some investigation?
Yes. I know why I'm asking that question.
Not the night that we were up there, because obviously Doug was the supervisor of the security team and we had permission to be there. After that happened, we went up around the area. As I mentioned, they have a gate up there now with no trespassing signs and cameras, so we can't get on the actual construction site, but we're able to go to like a little pull off right next door to it, or right up the road from it. So we're still within maybe 150 yards of the construction site in that same patch of woods. They actually have a windmill right there where we pull off, and it's gated off, but you can back a vehicle up. It's a little driveway kind of thing, and we pull our vehicles in there. We've never been stopped. We actually did have some interesting experiences there at that little pull off that makes me believe that these things are still around. But no, I've never had a police officer stop us or ask us what we're doing or nothing like that. I'm sure they have our license plates on their cameras, and see my black pickup truck and some other people's vehicles up there. But no, we never had a problem.
I think he's wanting to know if you've ever been accused of trespassing in the state of Virginia.
Yes. Yep. Thanks to your buddy, Tom. Yeah. And that's why I didn't stay in Virginia.
Oh my goodness. I guess he just thought we had free reign of everything out there. Oh man, it was funny.
So if you want me to share that story with you, I'll be happy to.
Sure, go ahead.
It's kind of a funny little story. Tom, we were down at that expedition in Virginia where you guys were at, and Tom said he knew of a place on a gas well line or a pipeline that there was a sighting, and he wanted to take us out. And so a bunch of us jumped in my car and decided to head out there. And he was the navigator, and we were driving some backcountry road, and he said, "Here, make a turn here, right here." And there was a gate that was open. So I said, "Okay, fine." So we turned down the road and we drove back past a whole bunch of farms and houses, waving at people as we're driving back through there, going, "Hey, how you doing?" And we found the pipeline. We hiked around the pipeline for a little while, nothing found, nothing seen. And we came back out, waved to everybody as we came back out, got out on the main road, and we're heading back to the campsite where our base camp was. And I got pulled over by a sheriff, and he was telling me that we trespassed on these people's property. And Tom took over the conversation. He kept apologizing profusely and said we didn't know it was no trespassing. And so fortunately, the guy kind of let us go with a warning. And to be honest, the gate that was open, apparently the cop said there was a no trespassing sign on that gate, but the gate was open and we didn't see it when we pulled in.
Didn't see it. Mm-hmm.
So we had no way of knowing. And there were no posted signs on anywhere on the road or the property. So we didn't know.
Right.
But yeah, I was so nervous about that cop coming back looking for me. I hightailed it out of Virginia that night. I was like, I ain't sticking around here to get arrested.
He packed that. I think it was record time packing up his tent and equipment.
I don't know if you remember it, Eric, but I was with you guys when we did it. I was in my Jeep.
Were you with us, Gary? I wasn't sure if you were with us in the truck or not.
Yeah.
You remember it well then, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man, the fun we had. Well, that hour flew by.
Yes, it did.
So, Eric, I want to thank you for coming on short notice. Appreciate that.
Oh, hey. Glad I was able to help you guys out. I saw you were looking for a guest, so.
Yeah, it's funny, all the guests that have agreed to come on just couldn't come on tonight. So you really helped us out there.
Well, yeah, I did the first show when you came back, and Gary wasn't a co-host at that point, so I figured this would be kind of cool to talk to Gary, and I know he's been asking a lot of questions to guests, so I figured it's a good chance for Gary to ask me some questions and chat with you guys again, and so it was fun. I had a good time.
Exactly. Good. Great. All right. If you don't mind, Eric, if you can hang on till after we end the show.
Sure.
And just want to say thank you to everybody that was in the chat. Thank you, Mick, for the comedy relief. You had Gary smirking and laughing, talking about your ex-mom's meatloaf. And, so you had him going pretty good. So appreciate that. And thank all you guys. We had some new folks come on. So hopefully they gave us a like, and hopefully we'll see them again as well. So thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. We will be back next Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Everybody have a great and wonderful rest of the week. Goodbye, everybody.
Everybody.